celebration of Black History Month, this list highlights the achievements of 5 African American men and their role in U.S. history. The next video in the series will highlight 5 African American women. Black History Month is an annual celebration. Since 1976, every U.S. president has officially designated the month of February as Black History Month. The 5 people this video features are Frederick Douglass, Jesse Owens, Jackie Robinson, Thurgood Marshall, and John Lewis. First on the list is Frederick Douglass. He was born in 1818 in Maryland, and he became one of the most famous intellectuals of his time. He advised presidents and held lectures on a range of causes, including women's rights. His writings describe his experiences in slavery and his life after the Civil War. His most famous work was entitled Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave. He became a national leader of the abolitionist movement, becoming famous for his oratory and anti-slavery writings. Here are 2 of his most famous quotes. "It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." And, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress." Next on the list is Jesse Owens. Jesse Owens was an American track and field athlete. He is also a 4-time gold medalist in the 1936 Olympics. He was best at the long jump and sprints. In his lifetime, he was known as possibly the most famous athlete in track and field history. He set 3 world records and tied with another. For Adolf Hitler and the Nazis in the 1936 Berlin Olympics, they were expected to showcase Germany's supremacy. Hitler mocked America for including black athletes in its roster. By the end, the United States won 11 gold medals, 6 of them by black athletes. Owens was the most dominant athlete to compete. A famous quote by Jesse Owens is this: "Although I wasn't invited to shake hands with Hitler, I wasn't invited to the White House to shake hands with the president either." Next we have Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson was the first African American to play Major League Baseball in the modern era. In April 15, 1947, he broke the decades-old color line of Major League Baseball when he appeared on the field for the Brooklyn Dodgers in a game against the Boston Braves. He faced bigotry and hatred from teammates, opponents, and fans, but would overcome racism to become a star player, and eventually a Hall of Famer. He lived most of his young life here in SoCal, in Pasadena. He attended John Muir High School, Pasadena Community College, and UCLA. Here's a quote from Jackie Robinson. "Life is not a spectator sport. If you're going to spend your whole life in the grandstand just watching what goes on, in my opinion, you're wasting your life." Next on the list is Thurgood Marshall. He was the first African American to be a Supreme Court justice. His most famous case was in 1954 when he was trying to fight for there to be no segregation in schools because at the time whites and blacks could not attend the same schools. This is one of the most famous cases in United States history, and it is known as Brown versus the Board of Education. At the end, Marshall won the case because he showed that segregation in schools was unconstitutional. In 1966, President Lyndon Johnson nominated Thurgood Marshall for the Supreme Court. He retired in 1991 and worked on the court for 24 years. Where you see wrong or inequality or injustice, speak out, because this is your country. This is your democracy. Make it, protect it, pass it on. Last on the list is John Lewis. John Lewis was an American politician, statesman, and civil rights activist and leader who served in the United States House of Representatives for Georgia's 5th Congressional District from 1987 until his death in 2020. He filled many key roles in the civil rights movement and its actions to end legalized racial segregation in the United States. Lewis was one of the Big Six leaders who organized the 1963 March on Washington. Later, in another civil rights protest, in an incident which became known as Bloody Sunday, state troopers and police attacked the marchers, including Lewis. Here's a famous quote by John Lewis. "When you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have to speak up. You have to say something. You have to do something." And those were 5 key figures for Black History Month. My next video will be on female figures to recognize during Black History Month. If you're wondering why I left out Martin Luther King Jr., there will be a future video entirely dedicated to him and the civil rights movement. A special shout out to my wonderful students for contributing facts for this video. Remember, a fact is not just the first thing you Google or find on Wikipedia. If you like this video, please show your support by subscribing.